Each year, school councils hold elections to elect parent representatives. This election process is a great opportunity to start off the year on a positive note and have some fun at the same time. This webinar episode will cover all you need to know to conduct a successful election. We'll go over how to plan your election, some helpful steps to follow during the election, as well as some final tasks to carry out afterwards. Before we dive into how to conduct an election, it's important to first understand the purpose of the fall election. This election selects parent reps, not executive positions like co-chairs, secretaries, and so on. These executive positions are chosen from the elected parents once the council's formed. Based on the board's policy and ministry regulation, a school council must have at least 5 or 6 parent reps, depending on whether there's a student on the council. At the secondary school level, there should be a student rep, so secondary schools should have at least 6 parent reps. Councils can create bylaws that allow for additional parent rep positions. You can learn more about these bylaws in the bylaw episode of this webinar series. Now that we know the basics of school council elections, the next step is to begin planning your fall election. Begin by forming an election planning committee, which will be responsible for planning and holding the election. This subcommittee of your school council is made up of parents, teachers, and support staff. A student rep should also be involved if you're a secondary school council. It's best to begin forming this committee in the spring so you have plenty of time to plan the election. The planning committee's first task is to choose an appropriate election date and time. The election must happen within the first 30 calendar days of the school year. Election information can be communicated to parents in June through the school newsletter and website. It's also the committee's responsibility to prepare all election materials, like the nomination form and ballot. The nomination form should be prepared in the spring. It's recommended that these forms be given out with welcome back materials in September, and they must be distributed at least 14 days prior to the election. Here's a sample nomination form. The form should tell parents of the date of the election, who's eligible to run, the number of positions available, the date that they'll need to return the completed nomination form by, and any other background information about the council. Notice the form asks parents to indicate why they're interested in becoming a parent rep. Schools are required to distribute information about the candidates to all parents prior to the election. This will help them decide who's best for the job. A template nomination form is available in the School Council section of peelschools.org. Once you've collected the nomination forms, determine if your school has enough nominees to hold the election. If the number of nominees prior to the election is less than or equal to the number of parent positions, the nominees are acclaimed and there's no need to hold the election. Be sure to inform the nominees first and then the community that the nominees have been acclaimed and who the council members are. If there are enough nominees for an election, your next step is to distribute to parents a list of all the candidates, along with their answers to the question from the nomination form. You could send this information home, post it on a school bulletin board, upload it to the school council section of your website, and email it out to subscribers. Make sure to include the date of the election, as well as the number of parent representatives parents can vote for. This should all be done at least a week before the election. Your next step is to create a ballot that lists the candidates' names. To be fair, the order should be determined by a draw. The ballot must also indicate the number of candidates that parents will need to select. Visit the School Council section at peelschools.org to find templates. With all that planning done beforehand, election day should run smoothly and without a hitch. Here are a few extra tips and rules to keep in mind during the election day. Your election must always be conducted by secret ballot. There's often a separate voting booth or table for parents to submit their votes. The voters should never be required to write their name on the voting ballot. The only people allowed to vote are parents or guardians of a student enrolled at the school. Each voter can only cast one vote for each candidate position. To keep track of votes, many schools choose to have a voters list, which is just a list of the parents at the school. Cross their name off the list after they've picked up their ballot. Voters must be present at the school on the election day. They can't submit a vote from work or home or ask another parent to submit the vote for them. Consider offering flexible hours for the election. Allow parents to drop by during the day or in the evening to cast their ballot. A neutral party should be running the election. Nominees are not permitted to staff the table. Now that the votes have been collected, it's up to the Election Planning Committee to count the ballots and notify the public of successful candidates. If there's a tie, the winner will be chosen by random draw. If there are vacant parent positions on council, council can still continue to operate, but attempts should be made to fill these positions. They can be filled throughout the year by appointing interested parents. These appointments to council are always made by majority vote. The school should announce who is elected within 30 days of the election. This can be done in the newsletter and on the school website. The first meeting should take place within the first 35 calendar days of the school year. This date should already be set prior to the election and often will be held before positions are announced. This webinar episode has provided all the information you need to know to run a smooth and successful election. You've learned how to plan your election by establishing an election committee and creating election materials. You've also learned some tips for during the actual voting process, as well as some ways to wrap up your election by communicating the results to the school community. Be sure to visit the School Council section at plschools.org to download the election timeline and template materials. If you have any questions, need clarification, or want to just bounce an idea off someone, contact the Communications and Community Relations Support Services Department. We're more than happy to help. To learn more about school councils,